Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm Hilmarie Hutchison, and today I'm so excited to introduce our guest of the day, Rita Ernst. Rita is the founder of Ignite Your Extraordinary, an organizational consulting practice that focuses on happiness and productivity to create positive, committed, high-performing organizations. Rita is the founder of Ignite Your Extraordinary, an organizational consulting practice that focuses on happiness and productivity to create positive, committed, high-performing organizations. She recently published her first book, Show Up Positive, earlier this year. Congratulations on that, and welcome and thank you so much for joining me today, Rita.
Thank you for inviting me, Hilmarie. I have become such a fan of the Green Pill podcast. I love the Green Pill stories. I learn from each one that I hear, so it is a real honor to join you.
That's fantastic. And I'm happy to hear that we have a dedicated listener out there. That's wonderful. I'm sure that many of our listeners might already have heard of you or know who you are, but for those who don't, could you please tell us your story?
I am an organizational psychologist. And what that means is that I am obsessed with why people behave the way they do at work and how you can harness our human tendencies and behaviors to achieve things collectively in a work setting. And so that whole idea of the convergence of happiness and productivity is that workplaces require both of those things. They require employees who are engaged and are being fulfilled and feel happy in their work. And that then helps pull along the productivity and the quality and the commitment that you need within an organization for people to collaborate together and achieve things.
That sounds wonderful. Let's just take a step back, though. Did you always imagine yourself ending up in this career? Where was Rita before you landed up in Ignite Your Extraordinary?
Yes, this has been my entire career. When I was looking in high school for colleges, I was specifically looking for industrial and organizational psychology programs. At that time, which is going to date me a little bit, there were not many. In fact, like positive psychology, which I love, did not exist. At that time, it was not even a discipline. So I started out at a private college that was very small, and they did not have industrial and organizational psychology in their curriculum, but I was able to work one-on-one with the professor and pursue that. And I knew I wanted to do that in high school because I fell in love with psychology at a very young age, but I didn't want to have patients. I didn't see myself as a therapist. That felt very stressful. Having somebody who had mental health problems and I felt responsible. That just didn't work for me, but I could see these applications that were emerging in business because at the time, we still had a lot of manufacturing inside of the US, which we do not have as much these days, but we manufactured our own textiles, our own paper. All of that was still being manufactured on US soil at the time. And everybody was trying to infuse the Kaizen or teamwork principles from Japan into our operations inside of the US, because we're a very individually centered culture versus this very we-centric culture in Asia. And they were killing us in quality and in the ability to price things cheaper because of their operations. So there was this whole movement afoot, and I wanted to be part of that. And I actually was an exchange student in Japan in my high school time, which just solidified all of that for me. So that was how I found my way into organizational psychology. And it is just my gift, my ability to step back and see the big picture and understand the dynamics and use my skills to tease out the details. Like all of that is just so easy for me. And it's my passion and it's my love. And I have never worked a day in my life.
That's fantastic. Your passion comes through. It's absolutely clear that you love what you do. What was the driving factor for you starting Ignite Your Extraordinary? Was that right after you finished your college, or did you have some other experiences before this?
I spent the first 16 years working inside of corporations as an internal consultant. And typically organization development was the discipline. It was usually aligned with human resources. So I learned a lot of human resources along the way. I built performance management systems, succession management systems, review tools, selection tools, all of those kinds of things, lots of training and leadership development programs, and a lot of change management. And I really do love change management work. Then I had my first child and we came to Louisville, Kentucky, where I currently live. We came to Louisville, Kentucky. I came here for a job and it just was not the right culture fit for me, which is very interesting when we start talking about Show Up Positive, but it was not a good culture fit for me. And my husband was the trailing spouse at the time. So he was home raising our daughter until she was a little over 3. And I was at work full time. And he said, I'm ready to tag out. Like, come on, tag me. I want to go back to work. You need to get her to kindergarten. And that was the game plan. And he was like, just treat it like a sabbatical, take 18 months off, get her on to, and then go find a job that you're really going to love. And that was the plan. And then I got pregnant with my second child. And I decided that I just wanted to lean into some time being the room mom and volunteering at the school and doing all of those things. But I still needed my mentally being a mother is not where I'm at. So I needed my professional mental stimulation. And luckily, all kinds of people just started contacting me and asking me if I could help this person they know, if I could help this company that they know. And so I had all of these referrals. And I really consider myself initially a freelance person. But after my second daughter was born, I looked at my life and I said, I like this life and I don't want to go back to the corporate grind. And so I guess I'm going to hang out my shingle and become a real business. And that was when I officially named my business Ignite Your Extraordinary and went from calling myself a freelance person to a business owner.
Wow, an incredible story. So you had some real solid experience before, and then you were able to then turn that into your own gig. What is the story behind the name of your company? I'm sure there's a story.
Naming a company is such a big deal. It's a huge thing to think, what are you going to name yourself? It has never been my intention to be the big, well-known celebrity company. This is what I love to do. Just help me find a little niche where I can do that and do it well and serve people. I play big, but I think a little small sometimes, right? So I wasn't trying to come up with a name that was this huge thing. What I really thought about is my business card. And I said, I want this business card that when I hand it over to somebody that I meet, it intrigues them. I wanted them to stop and go, what's that about? And when I think about my work and what I do, what at the core, what organizational development is all about is helping people find their path to extraordinary, whatever their definition for themselves, for their extraordinary is. It's not the same with every individual. And so that is how I came up with the idea of Ignite Your Extraordinary. And I found this beautiful graphic of the striking of a match and the spark that gets created. And from there, I got into this thinking about setting off the sparks. And that's where in my logo, there are the fireworks that are sort of shooting off in the logo. And that's sort of how all of that came together.
I love it. And it certainly is intriguing. Ignite Your Extraordinary. Fantastic name. And an excellent story behind it. So you recently published your very first book, Show Up Positive, as I mentioned in the introduction. So without spoiling the book, could you please tell us a little bit what it's about?
The book is a call to action. It is sort of a manifesto. I created it. And when I was finished writing the book, I wrote the book in 2 months. And when I finished writing the book, I said to somebody, I really want to create a movement. That sounds really scary to say out loud, but I really want to activate people to take control of their workplace and use their personal agency in a way that they are creating what they want. I am a behaviorist in the psychological disciplines. I believe that we have that ability through behavior to create the kind of world that we want. Not 100% of the time, but we have a lot more control. I don't believe that we are just blown by the winds of fate. So I really wrote the book to be that I wanted to draw the reader in. I wanted to light up their thinking and give them some hope. Because the context for the book, Hilmarie, is the pandemic. The pandemic served as the inspiration for the book. I share one client's story from that time throughout the book. So at the end of each chapter, I tell part of the story as it relates to what we talked about in the chapter. And then I sprinkle other stories throughout. But what happened is everybody thought it was so hard to go home and set up your home office and have to work remotely and do all of those things. The people who were calling me that were really struggling were essential working businesses. As weird and difficult as it was for us to go home and set up an office and learn how to use Zoom and do all of this stuff, there were people who had to show up in their normal workplace every day, but everything about the workplace was different. They had to social distance. They had to take their temperature coming through the door. One day you masked, the next day you didn't. You had to sanitize. You had all these cleaning protocols. Alice in Wonderland for them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's something you don't think of in those terms. As you mentioned, that everyone just went home and did work from home. But there were indeed a lot of people that had to continue in their regular situation, but with all the new protocols and all the new stresses on top of that.
And they still had kids at home that needed to homeschool. In the US, maybe nobody to help them. It was very hard to find care workers. If you didn't have family nearby to help you, it was a huge problem because nobody trusted going into somebody else's home. And you had all this concern about, are you going to get exposed at work? And then are you going to take that home to your loved ones? And what's that going to mean if your household gets sick? And what if you lose somebody because you brought this virus home? There was just so many stressors. And so what happened is workplaces that people loved. I had one woman say to me, I drove them crazy for 3 years begging for a job here, waiting for the opening. And then she was thinking about leaving after the pandemic because it had become so toxic and so negative. And so there were these workplaces that were wonderful, high-performing teams that eventually just were completely derailed by all of this change and all of the stressors and the anxiety that accompanied it. And the way I tell the story in the book is at first people commiserated, which is what we tend to do. We get together and we talk about our pain, and sometimes we find a little solace in that. But then the commiseration became complaining. And then the complaining turned into cannibalization because we started complaining about one another and getting really judgmental and getting, people were policing one another. They were scorekeeping. You're not working as hard as I am and all of these things. And it just became the dumpster fire that everybody memed about their workplaces being. And I believe that for most of us, especially for professionals, and I know this from working with business owners who built their own companies, we have a lot of our ego and our self-esteem tied up in our professional identity. And to rip that rug out from under everybody and leave them flailing was a very seriously challenging moment. And I found a way to heal that. And I just wanted to make that path available to as many people as possible and to let people know during all of the hype about the Great Resignation that people were not alone. You don't have to abandon your company that you've loved. That's not the only answer. And that you can use your voice and your power as an agent of change.
Fantastic. So you had absolutely a clear direction when you set out to write the book. Was the end result different from what you expected, or was it exactly as you had planned it?
Was pretty much exactly as I had planned it. I will say one of the first things I published through an independent publisher. I had somebody that was sort of coaching and guiding me and getting things set up on the back end. And at one point, Sharon asked me how long the book was going to be. Give me an idea of how many pages. And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, it needs to be more than 50 pages to really be a book. And I said, well, it'll be at least 100 pages because I'm going to put 50 show up sparks at the end of the book, which we haven't talked about, but I'd love to tell your listeners about. And so each of those are going to be a 2-page spread. And then I'm going to write the manifesto in part 1. So it'll be at least 100 pages. It ended up being 280 pages. That was what was a little bit mind-blowing, was that I had that much to say.
Yes, you had so much to share that it could fill that many pages. Since you mentioned it, let's talk about it right away. Show Up Sparks, what's that about?
So the book is written in 2 parts, and it was very important to me to really speak to the reader. And so I wrote the book as if you were my client and we were in conversation together. I'm telling you stories just like I tell my clients all the time, because I think stories and metaphors and analogies are wonderful ways to deliver ideas and get people thinking differently. And so I speak to you in the book as I'm writing. You're reading it as if we're in conversation together. I grew up in reading business books and going through my master's work, learning to professionally write and write for education and write for business. And I decided to just throw all those rules away. And thank goodness for people like Lovey A.J. Jones and Glennon Doyle, whose books I love. I looked at the women who were writing, who were really pulling me in. And I said, I need to follow their playbook. And I just abandoned all the rules of business books. I wrote to you, the reader, as if you were my client. And I created very small chunks of information in part one, because I've been the busy mom and the busy person. I know what it's like to think, oh, I'm going to settle in and read for 30 minutes. And I get 5 minutes in and I get pulled away by something. I try to keep things in nice little 5-minute nuggets that you could read and then put the book down and then come back and not feel like you're lost and trying to remember where you are.
I absolutely love that. I can't tell you how often that happens to me. You just get into a chapter and then you pulled away. And the next time you come back, you go, where was, then you start all over again. End up reading that same page 10 times because you want to, have the flow of the whole chapters. I love that. Excellent idea.
And so the second part of the book with the sparks, one of the original ideas I didn't share is originally I was thinking maybe I need to create this dictionary of words and ideas. I called it the ABCs of culture: actions, beliefs, and characteristics of creating a positive culture. That was one of my early ideas for the book. I actually sat one day, probably took me 2 days actually, and just started brainstorming all the words, all the actions, beliefs, and characteristic words I could come up with that related to a positive culture in the workplace. And I came up with over 300. So I decided I was going to only select 50 for this book. And of course, now I've got a whole series of books that I can do with all the others. And I started practicing. I had a blog and a group of readers, and I shifted my blog to these Show Up Positive Sparks. And I started picking a word a week and blogging that out to my audience just to test the ideas of the book and see if they were resonating, if anybody cared about it. And I got really great feedback. And so I picked my 50 favorite ones and put them in the back of the first book. And most of them are 2-page spreads. Some of them eked over to 4 pages, but I give you a word: amplify. Let's take the word amplify. And then I'll give you 3 synonyms to help you understand the word amplify. And then I'll give you a little story and a little definition about what amplification is. So amplifying is elevating somebody else's voice, making something be heard more loudly, more broadly. And then we'll talk about what that looks like in the workplace. What does it look like if you start amplifying? You start making sure other people's voices that are maybe not being heard are getting heard. You're sharing messages and echoing messages from other people and giving them credit. I talk about all kinds of very tangible, tactical ways to practice amplification in your team in a way that's going to create positivity within the team. And then at the end, I give 4 questions. I call them questions worth contemplating. 4 questions to really help you think more deeply about how to use this action word in your daily work. And the idea is not that every day you take a different word. It's like every week, every 2 weeks, every month, you pick a word and you work on it in a very concentrated and deliberate way until it becomes second nature to you, until it gets more embedded in how you show up every day. And then in between, if you're having a problem, you might find a word in the book that might help you have ideas for how to navigate a difficult conversation or a conflict with somebody in a different way.
I love that. That is so practical, and it can make a real difference if you're able to apply that. I think that's brilliant. I love that you abandoned the traditional way of writing a book and you followed your own path and you've created something that is so practical, so positive for businesses and for culture. I just wanted to ask, who are you looking to reach through your book?
This book is for the person who refuses to be the victim in their own story. And for anybody who loves redemption stories and love them enough that you believe you can star in your own, this book is for you. Those are the people I'm talking to. It's not blind optimism and hope, but it is people who say, I am a smart, capable, intelligent, able-bodied person, and this situation needs to change, and I need to be part of the solution.
Fantastic. So it can be anybody. It could be the CEO. It could be the intern. It's up to their mindset.
Exactly. Even if you ultimately decide to leave a job, let's say you're an intern and you take an internship and you decide this company or this culture or this work isn't really right for me, and you're struggling while you are there, you can make a choice. You have two choices. You can either give in to the struggle and let that define that time, and from a very defeated point of view, or you can say, I've got to figure out how to get the best I can get out of this situation. What's the best I could get? I'm going to look every day for the best that I can get out of this situation. I'm going to learn my lessons. I'm going to, even the things that knock me down, I'm going to take something good away from that, and it's going to help down the road.
Beautiful. That's such a good way of looking at things, because then everything is a learning experience, even the tough things. I love that.
One of the things I want to say while we're talking about the tough things, Hilmarie, is that this book is not about sunshine and rainbows and lollipops. If you think, oh, another positivity book, oh, toxic positivity, I don't want to read that drivel. That is not what this book is about. There's a whole chapter called What Positivity Is Not, for a very specific reason. Because in my definition of positivity, I want your listeners to understand positivity comes from being true to yourself. It starts from within you and looking at what's important and what matters to you and being true to yourself. If you are not living and able to be in your workplace in a way that is being true to yourself, you are not going to find positivity. And I give a story of somebody who stood up and took on the man at work because there was behavior that was going on that where the walk and the talk were not matching. To me, that's not being conflictual. That's not being difficult. That's showing up positive for yourself. If you live in the integrity of who you want to be from a place of creating meaningful things in the world around you, not in a place of judging and scorning and retribution, but from a place of building and creating, then you can have the difficult conversations and still be a positive force. Those things do not conflict with one another.
Just like happiness, it comes from inside you. It's an internal thing, for sure. Listen here, the things that you are saying, the learnings, the tips that you are talking about is fantastic. I can hear this is a book absolutely everyone should read, and we could continue talking about this. I have so many questions for you on this, but I'm going to stop there because we'll be here all day. But I want to ask you one question. You spoke about the ABCs of culture. If there was one piece of advice you could give to an entrepreneur or a small business owner about how to start to create a positive culture, what would that be?
I think the most important thing to understand is that every person inside an organization is an architect of the culture. There's all kinds of books that have been written, all kinds of conversations that happen that sort of put culture on the shoulders of the founder or the executives at the top of the organization, or strangely, sometimes in the seat of HR. But culture is simply the accepted norms and behaviors of how we engage daily that create our shared experiences. The person at the top of the organization does not create the shared experiences for every person. That happens person to person, team to team, coworker to coworker. So when you start thinking about your culture and what is happening, where you need to give your time and attention is to those person-to-person experiences. Now, you need to also think about what are the values, what are the norms at the larger company level that I want to be the standards for my company. Naming those is not the same thing as creating those. Naming those is simply setting the boundaries and the guideposts. And then all the rest is about the relationships and exchanges that each person creates with the other people around them. That is the place that we are most erroneous at times in our thinking and really need to shift our understanding.
So it's not about writing up or creating a policy of how you should act. It's about actually acting in an appropriate way every single time you interact with different people or team members on your team, because in that way, you're setting the tone.
Absolutely. I share a story in the book and I'll do real brief. I promise, Hilmarie. I know I'm a long talker. There's a story that I share where everybody was complaining because everybody wasn't pulling their weight in one of the teams, and they went to management. You need to fix this person. You need to fix this problem. Well, management does what management does. They created a process by which people were pre-assigned their duties each week that they had to do. The team still wasn't happy. They were probably madder than they were before that had happened, because you cannot. This issue is not something that you can process fix. It's about how people are engaging, how they're seeing one another. You've got to work at the more fundamental level, and workers need to stop asking their managers to be mom and dad and fix those kinds of problems. And managers need to stop falling into the trap of being a parent to their teams and turning back to the team and saying, how are we going to fix this together, instead of feeling on the hook to have the right answer and fix it themselves. And then let me just throw in one other really important thing. And we talked about this earlier, small deliberate changes. Don't think that you're just going to give attention to this in the short term and do some big wow thing and the culture is going to get fixed. It's experiences and behaviors. So you've got to chip away at those daily, weekly, monthly, annually.
Excellent. I think that's excellent advice, excellent tips. And of course, the best tip I can give entrepreneurs and small business owners is go get the book, read the book, and you're going to learn all these extraordinary tips and things on how to have a better culture. Thank you so much, Rita, for sharing all this fantastic insight. It's been really so engaging. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Now, we've come to the segment of our show where I'll ask you some rapid fire questions, our version of a game show. Are you ready?
I am ready. And I was expecting this, although I have no idea what you're going to ask. So we'll hope I do justice to your wonderful, intriguing questions you always ask, Hilmarie.
I can always tell when someone's actually listened to the podcast because they know this is coming versus absolutely being taken by surprise. So what is your favorite color?
Purple.
Mine too. Who is the one person you call in times of stress or happiness?
Oh, that's probably my best friend.
Okay. What do you do in your free time?
I read and walk my dog.
Very nice. What is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you are?
I walk with my dog every day. Out in nature too, like not just in the neighborhood. We live near a park, so we go out on the trails in the park. I love to just get lost in nature. It is the most wonderful reset for my brain. I get my most creative ideas. I get energized by that.
And you have a happy pup.
Yes.
Which is great. Well, that was the game show. That was easy enough. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask about your green pill moment. Could you share an inspiring or life-changing experience that you have gone through your green pill moment?
My green pill moment happened when, as I described earlier, I sort of have built Ignite Your Extraordinary around my lifestyle. Somebody said, you got to build a lifestyle business, which is true. I was at this place. My oldest daughter was in middle school. My younger daughter was still in grade school. And my oldest daughter was a competitive gymnast. And I started working at the gym. It was newly purchased, new owner, and we became fast friends. And I started sort of coaching her a little bit about her business and started working inside of the business. And I did that for, I don't even remember how long now. Probably close to 2 years, maybe even longer. And one of the things that I miss so much about being a solopreneur, Hilmarie, is that I love having colleagues. I'm an extrovert processor, so I get so much energy from having people to bounce ideas off of and stuff. So being back in a situation where I had coworkers and I was learning how to teach gymnastics to little kids. And so I was researching and learning from the people around me. It was just this really uplifting, fun time. And I was also doing all this work in the back office to help her. And so at one point we had this conversation where she was like, you're really overstepping your bounds a little bit too much. And I need you to pull back. And I reflected on that. And I thought, well, that's interesting because like I said, I'm all in when I am excited and driven by something. Most companies really want people to take a lot of initiative. In a small company, I can see where that's breaking through boundaries. But as I reflected on that and I thought about, can I pull myself back when I see a problem? I just want to fix it. What does this mean to me and my long-term happiness here? I also realized, Hilmarie, have I ever put this much energy into my own company? Like, I'm at this place where my kids are starting to get older. If I took all the time I'm spending at the gym doing this and I put that to my business and working in earning money, serving business owners in my community, what would I be building? And that would be my own. Why am I so willing to work so hard for somebody else and not myself? And it really was that green pill moment where I was, okay, I'm going to step back from this hobby thing that I'm doing that has given me this great moment in my life, but I'm going to take all of that energy and passion and I'm going to put it back into my business and my projects. It really gave me new life and gave my brand new life.
Oh, what a fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as you say, we work as business owners, you do work very hard. If you are going to be putting that much initiative and that much work into it, why not for yourself? As a business owner, I love to have team members who have that attitude of they see a problem and they're willing to step up and fix it. That's what all business owners would love to have is people who have initiative, who have drive, who are willing just to step up. If it wasn't going to be for someone else, yes, why not for yourself? So an excellent green pill moment. And you certainly have taken that and have taken that a long way. So well done on that. Thank you so much for this conversation. It really has been fantastic. It's been good to get to know you and to hear a little bit about the book. For sure, we will be getting that book and reading it. And I'm sure many people or many of our listeners are going to want to read your book. I know it is available internationally, so I guess all the main booksellers will be carrying it, right?
You can order it. You can find the ISBN number, whatever, on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. If you don't use that bookseller, you just need that. The distributor can ship it and independent booksellers can purchase it from the distributor. So it is a global distributor. And that's the easiest way to do it is just to go to your bookseller with the ISBN number and say, can you order this book for me?
Before we say goodbye, could you please tell our listeners where they can find and follow you?
Please go to my website, igniteextraordinary.com. You will find all of my social links there. There are contact forms if you want to talk to me. There is a page called Show Up Positive that has links to order the book from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and my local bookseller, which is Carmichael's Bookstore, as well as a description of topics I speak on and workshops and other offerings around the Show Up Positive book that I have developed. I have this lovely card deck we could talk an hour about, Hilmarie, that I think you would absolutely love. That is a companion piece to the book. It's 24 additional Show Up Positive sparks that are around teaming and effectiveness in meetings that are meant to be like the carry in your pocket, take with you anywhere inspiration. So all of that stuff is available and you can learn about that on my website.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been brilliant and I wish you all the very best. And I will certainly be looking out for the next book because I'm sure there must be one in the making.
There is. I think I've got the title down. I think I know what I want to do for the cover. I'm thinking December and January again are going to be my writing months.
Fantastic. Thank you again and all the very best.
Thank you.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.